Hey, this is Update Recap. I am about to spoil for you the movie that you love the most. Consider subscribing to this channel for more videos like this. Immediately following J. When Jonah Jameson outs Peter Parker as Spider-Man, Peter grabs MJ to get away from the stunned New Yorkers who believe he orchestrated Mysterio's London drone attacks. Peter swings with MJ to get away from the crowds, but news helicopters swarm them. They escape by swinging through the subways. Peter and MJ return to the Parkers' apartment, where Aunt May and Happy have just broken up, but they soon learn that Peter's identity has been revealed. While Peter investigates what happened to May and Happy, they notice news helicopters outside the apartment, and Peter is forced to comply with authorities. Despite his efforts to return to a normal life, Peter is pursued by people who believe he is either a hero or a threat. Peter tries to make it work with the help of his friends. They concentrate on their college applications, but all of them have been rejected due to recent events. MIT, their dream school, rejects them all. Peter feels responsible for the destruction of his friends' lives as a result of their association with him. Peter goes to the Sanctum Sanctorum to see Doctor Strange and asks him if he can turn back time to prevent people from discovering his secret identity. But Strange believes that tampering with time was already risky when the Avengers saved the world from Thanos. He then thinks of a spell that could help things, but Wong warns Strange that the consequences could be disastrous. Strange ignores Wong and takes Peter to a lower level where he begins to cast the spell so that everyone forgets who he is. Spider-Man. Peter begins to make changes in the middle of the spell because he still wants MJ, Ned, May, and Happy to know who he is, causing the spell to destabilize and create a brief rift, which Strange manages to control. Strange chastises Peter for not even contacting the MIT administrator to discuss reconsidering for MJ and Ned before requesting the spell. Peter contacts Flash, who claims to be Spider-Best Man's friend and assists Peter in attempting to contact the MIT administrator as she is driving to the airport and crossing the Alexander Hamilton Bridge. Peter creates. It makes it through a traffic jam and approaches the administrator, but his spidey senses go off. Mechanical tentacles emerge from beneath the bridge, and people flee their vehicles. Dr. Otto Octavius / Dr. Octopus emerges from beneath the bridge. He addresses Peter, who is dressed up as Spider-Man, to fight him. He tries to save the administrator, but Doc Ock continues to attack him. Spidey manages to web the admin's car up safely before Doc Ock catches him under the bridge and rips off a piece of the Spidey suit's nanotech, which attaches itself to his tentacles. However, due to the programming of the suit, Peter is able to command the tentacles and uses them to lift the administrator to safety. Otto then notices that this Peter is not the Peter Parker he knows and blames for his failed reactor experiment. She tells Peter that he is a hero and that she will discuss MJ and Ned's applications, as well as his, with the board. A cackling figure then throws a pumpkin bomb onto the bridge, blowing up some cars. Otto recognizes Norman Osborn / Green Goblin, but Peter is pulled through one of Strange's portals. Strange reveals to Peter that he has built holding cells in the Sanctum, where he keeps Otto and Dr. Kurt Connors / the Lizard. Strange claims that because Peter tampered with the spell, people from other multiverses who recognize Peter as Spider-Man have broken through. Strange gives Peter a magical gauntlet that allows him to capture the multiverse figures, and Peter enlists the assistance of MJ and Ned. Strange allows them to assist from the basement of the Sanctum. While they search for the others, Otto observes that he cannot see Norman because he died years before Otto became Doc Ock. Peter walks out into the night towards a field with massive electrical towers. When he notices Max Dillon / Elektra siphoning energy from the towers, he begins to fire electrical bolts at Spidey. Flint Marko / Sandman protects him, remembering how Peter Parker helped him after an earlier adventure, but Peter has to explain that he is not the Peter Flint knows. Peter then rips the tower's charges to bring Max down. His previously glowing blue body returns to its normal state. The gauntlet is then used by Peter to transport Max and Flint to the holding cells. Norman breaks out of his goblin disguise and smashes his helmet before fleeing to the feast center where May works. She calls Peter and informs him that he has arrived. Jameson continues to report on Spider-Man on his show, and he receives word from his crew about Peter's whereabouts in order to apprehend him for a major story. Norman is brought to the Sanctum by Peter, who recognizes Otto. In Flint's universe, both Norman and Otto are dead, while Lizard recognizes Max from his previous nerdy appearance, and Max acknowledges the Lizard's rampage across New York, where he attempted to transform everyone into creatures similar to himself. Strange then appears with a relic known as the Machina de Cadavers, which contains the botch spell and will be used to return the villains to their respective universes. However, after learning that they are all doomed to die fighting Spider-Man, Peter believes that there is another way to make things right. He steals Strange's relic and flees into the streets with it. Strange separates Peter's spirit from his body, but his reflexes allow him to avoid Strange and reassemble himself to continue fleeing. Strange then drags Spidey into the mirror dimension, despite Peter's efforts to persuade Strange that there must be a better way to fix things. Things must be done without allowing the villains to perish. When Spidey realizes that the mirror dimension is similar to geometry, he devises a method to trap Strange in web and secure the relic before fleeing, leaving Strange behind, and stealing his portal creator. Peter proposes an alternate plan in which he will cure the villains of their corruptions before returning them to their respective homes to avoid their fates. He leaves the relic with MJ and Ned, along with the portal maker, before taking the villains to his and May's new apartment, where he finds the necessary components. Peter shows the villains a Stark fabricator that can make what they need, but Max is drawn to the arc reactor's energy. With Norman's assistance, Peter creates a new chip for Otto that allows him to control the tentacles rather than the other way around. Otto returns the nanotech to Peter's suit, and Peter hands Max a device that drains his body's electric power. Unfortunately, his Spidey senses activate, and he witnesses Norman reverting to Goblin in an attempt to thwart the plan. Goblin persuades Max to accept his power and reject the cure. Max and Flint flee together, while Lizard escapes from the truck he was in. Otto is thrown out the window by Goblin. However, he escapes at the same time as Jameson and his crew. Spidey fights Goblin while the villain smashes him through the building's floors, while May grabs the Goblin antidote and flees. When they apprehend Goblin on the floor, May tries to inject him with the antidote, but it fails, and Goblin uses his glider to strike May before fleeing and firing pumpkin bombs at the news crew and officers outside. May gets up and walks over to Peter. He blames himself and believes he should have listened to Strange, but May assures him that he did the right thing and reminds him that with great power comes great responsibility. They begin to leave, but May becomes aware that she has been seriously injured. Peter stands by her side as she passes away. When Happy drives by and sees May dead, he is apprehended by police. The SWAT team arrives to surround the building and fire on Peter, but he manages to flee. May's death is reported in the news, with Jameson blaming Spider-Man and Peter feeling enormous guilt. MJ and Ned attempt to locate Peter using the portal maker. Ned gets it to work and finds Peter. Except that it isn't their Peter. This other Spider-Man enters Ned's grandmother's room through the portal. He dupes MJ and Ned into believing he is Peter Parker. When Ned tries once more, he discovers yet another Peter Parker. When the two Spider-Men meet, Toby Peter explains that he has been looking for the Peter of this universe in order to assist him. Because MJ and Ned can't find him, the Peters conclude he must be somewhere. A place where they usually go to get away from their problems. MJ knows where to look for him. MJ and Ned discover their Peter on the roof of the building where they previously hung out. They console him over May's death, and he expresses regret for attempting to aid the villains. The other Peters come out to talk to Tom Peter, but he refuses to listen because he is consumed by rage and hatred for Goblin. Toby Peter mentions how he wanted the man who murdered his Uncle Ben to die, but getting his wish didn't make him feel any better. Andrew Peter expresses regret for failing to save Gwen Stacy. When Tom Peter realizes what his variants have gone through, he realizes he cannot let May die in vain. The three Peters, plus MJ and Ned, continue to work on cures while bonding and marveling at each other's unique abilities, such as Toby Organic Peter's web shooters. Tom Peter confides in MJ about his concerns, and she assures him that she will be by his side. He then calls the Daily Bugle for Jameson's show to speak to the entire city of New York and assure them that, while he created this mess, he will fix it. While MJ and Ned guard the relic, the Spider-Man lure the villains to the Statue of Liberty, where they are adding a Captain America shield. The Peters discuss other past experiences, such as Toby Peter fighting the symbiote and Tom Peter fighting Thanos, while Andrew Peter laments fighting Rhino but is assured by the other two that he is still amazing. Sandman, Lizard, and Electro soon appear and begin fighting the Spider-Men. While attempting to administer the cures, the heroes are repeatedly knocked down. They decide on specific targets, and the three Spideys swing into action together. Toby Peter battles Sandman but manages to cure him so he can return to being Flint, and Toby Peter promises to bring him home to his daughter. When Lizard notices the open portal, he chases MJ and Ned out onto the scaffolding. Tom Peter captures Lizard and transforms him back into Kurt. Electro is formidable, but Otto reappears and assists Andrew Peter by removing the arc reactor with his tentacles and placing the cure on his chest. While Max is sorry, Andrew Peter does not hold anything against him, which Max appreciates. Goblin rides on his glider for the attack. Ned frees Strange from the mirror dimension and observes the three Spideys in action. The scaffolding is destroyed by Goblin, and MJ falls over the edge. Tom Peter tries to save her, but he is hit by the glider. Andrew Peter rushes in to save MJ, and he appears to feel redeemed for Gwen for a brief moment. Tom Peter detonates one of Goblin's bombs, causing the glider to crash into the collapsed cap shield. He webs Goblin and begins pummeling him in rage. After that, Tom Peter grabs the glider and prepares to impale him. However, Toby Peter enters and stops him. Goblin stabs Toby Peter in the back, and he starts laughing at Tom Peter for failing to save May. But he injects him with the cure and completely removes Goblin from Norman's body, and he feels terrible about hurting his Peter. A rift in the sky then appears, with more potential villains about to break through the multiversal barriers, and Strange says he can't stop them. Peter then suggests a final spell that will make people forget not only that he is Spider-Man, but also that he exists. This means that Strange, MJ, Ned, and Happy will all forget who Peter is, but it is the only way to get things back on track. Peter says goodbye to his variants with a group hug, all of them acknowledging each other as brothers, and then goes to tell MJ and Ned what has to happen. Ned bids his best friend farewell with tears in his eyes, while Peter and MJ profess their love for one another and share one final kiss before he departs. Everyone is then transported back to their own universe. Jameson continues to bash Spider-Man in the media. Peter now lives on his own, with no one knowing who he is. He finds MJ and Ned at the cafe where she works. They are still friends and have both been accepted to MIT. Peter returns to his apartment, where he listens in on any criminal activity using a police scanner. He then returns to his duties as Spider-Man to protect New York. That's all from the movie. Make sure you subscribe to this channel for more videos like this. Thank you.